Meeting of the Public Accountability Board for January 2024. So Happy New Year to all those that I haven't said Happy New Year to several times already. Happy New Year. And we've got the papers in the agenda in front of us. We're being filmed and that will be put on the website ultimately, and there are people watching live now, but more particularly they'll watch the recorded version when that goes up on the website. And we do have a journalist in the room, Paul, and we welcome him from the Rotherham Advertiser today. Just quickly go around the table. It's a hybrid meeting, so there are some people online and we can see them on the screen, but just so that they know who's around the table here. So Alan Billings, Police and Crime Commissioner.
Sharon Borden, Violation Scrutiny in the Office of the Police and Crime Commissioner.
Steve Wright, Chair of the Joint Independent Audit Committee.
Sarah Pullman, Assistant Chief Constable, Crime and Vulnerability.
I'm Tim Forbes, I'm the Deputy Chief Constable.
Afternoon, I'm Simon Munless, I'm Barnsley District Commander.
Debbie Carrington, Chief Finance Officer for the Force.
Sally Clarkin, Police and Crime Commissioner's Office.
Fiona Topless, Police and Crime Commissioner's Office.
And we've also got Naomi in the room, who's newly joined our staff, and she's observing and watching what's going on. So we promise not to ask questions of you, Naomi, today. So turning to the agenda then, that's the welcome. The apologies, we've had a number of apologies. The Chief Constable is on annual leave. ACC Thorpe sends apologies, as does Jacqueline Bland, Carrie Goodwin, Erica Redfern from my office, Michael Lewis, and Michelle Buttery also sends apologies today, Chief Exec. Moving on to item 3 then, announcements. A couple of announcements. First, to say that Michelle is not here because she is at a Police and Crime Panel meeting for Nottinghamshire, where they are looking for a new Chief Executive. And since her job disappears here when the mayoral, we transition to the mayoral authority, she's the preferred candidate for Nottinghamshire. So we wish Michelle well this afternoon, and fingers crossed that all goes well for her. No reason why not. And we congratulate Tim Forbes, our Deputy Chief Constable, who's will be leaving us to become the Chief Constable of North Yorkshire in the fullness of time. I think you're with us for a little bit yet, Tim, but we just wanted to place on record formally in PAB, in case you're not at another PAB, our thanks for the time that you've been DCC here. I mean, we all know Deputy is an absolutely crucial role, and you've played that in South Yorkshire with, you've brought your expertise, your experience and your energy to bear on that, and we're most grateful to you, and you've been instrumental along with your colleagues in getting the force into the place where it is today, a really good performing force. So we, in that sense, we'll be really, really sorry to see you go. I mean, personally, we're pleased for you that you've reached the top of your professional tree, and that's a really fantastic thing. So formally, we thank you for what you've done here, and we do wish you all the very best when you do move to North Yorkshire. They're very lucky, I think, to have you.
Thank you. And that's very kind of you, Commissioner. I think that what I'd say is it's been a privilege to be part of South Yorkshire Police for the past 7 years. It's a team effort, and work for over, it's kind of you to acknowledge my contribution, but it's very much a team effort, and I've been very privileged to work with such a fantastic team here over 7 years, and I shall miss the place greatly.
Well, I'm glad you're going to miss us. But also, of course, it does land us with both a problem and an opportunity, but a hard act to follow. Difficult for someone to fill your shoes, and you've set the bar, if I may say so, very, very high, which is very good. But it makes it a struggle to find replacements. Okay. So, are there any other announcements? If not, I think we can move to public questions, which I don't think we have any, do we, Simon?
We don't know.
And urgent items, I don't know if there was anything you want to say from a policing perspective about current things that are going on. We had that dreadful killing in Burngreave just after Christmas. don't know if there's anything else.
Well, I wouldn't talk specifically about that investigation because it's a live investigation, but we absolutely acknowledge that there was considerable concern in the community around that. We continue to work with the Untitled community to reassure them. Also, we had another very serious incident in Meadowhall Shopping Centre, which has been dealt with, but again, that's now the subject of an ongoing prosecution. So I won't say anything further around it. Needless to say that we've worked very, very closely with the team at Meadowhall to make sure that the business as usual returns very, very quickly.
Yeah, and it's about reassuring the public in the
Absolutely.
meantime. So moving on then to item 6, are there any issues that can't be discussed publicly? I don't think there are. No, got a mystery voice joining in there somewhere. Item 7, declaration of interest. Are there any interests that need to be declared? Item 8 then, the minutes of the meeting held on the 6th of November. They're pages 5 to about 12 in the pack. Any questions or comments on the kind of note form that we take the minutes in these days? If not, we'll accept the minutes. And then we have the matters and actions arising from those minutes on page 13. Item 9, 2 of them I think they're both covered off, aren't they? The second one, Sally, has also been addressed now, so I think we're all covered on that. We come then to item 10, which is forced performance, and the first of the reports we have there from the Barnsley district, and we've got Chief Superintendent Wanless with us. Simon, you know the routine by now. I won't go through page by page, but I will have a look at some of those things that have jumped out at me as being of interest or concern, whatever, and then at the end, if there's anything that we've missed you want to pick up on, very happy for you to do that. So if you're happy with that.
Absolutely.
So we're thinking Barnsley of the 4 districts. We do each district in turn, and today it's Barnsley. First of all, I'm on page. Well, I'm sort of on page 15 and 16. That's item 2.1, 2.2. Probably all the twos actually on well, as far as 2.3 on there, and that's the whole question of numbers and resources and uplift. As I read it, there seemed to be a bit of tension between your saying you needed more resources, and you say, demand is such that I need more resources, and then saying that we've got uplift and numbers are coming through, and I couldn't quite get my head around that. Do you need more resources, or is uplift resolving the problems and the issues for you?
Uplift is resolving the problems. It's, I suppose, the rub, if you like, is the time taken to come through to actually be deliverable assets. That's probably the difficulty. And clearly the force has grown in the last 5 years outside of district policing as well. So it's just balancing the incoming new student officers to district while also servicing growth departments elsewhere with experienced officers. So it's just it's a fine balance at district to maintain the sort of the operational experience of teams and sufficient balance across the teams, whilst also allowing development opportunities for staff to move on to other roles outside of district. So we have a programme. I can see it played out over the next 12 months where students are arriving at district, and then obviously we've got the job adverts for people to leave, and unfortunately we are having some people leave the organisation unexpectedly, not in big numbers, but that's always going to be a very fine balance.
Is that what causes the problem, where people leave and the student officers are not yet ready to?
I think the broader challenge across the force is, we've talked many times about the volume of officers that we've recruited, but we still have a relatively inexperienced workforce. We still have a very significant number of our police officers that are still in at some stage of their training or another. And the reality is it takes about 2.5 years to have a fully operationally competent, deployable police officer who can work independently. And those officers flowing through our district policing hubs across all 4 districts. The challenge that you have is at the other end, you've got people retiring, moving off to other jobs, be it within, for example, the CT hub or going off to the regional organised crime unit, and people, reaching the end of the service and retiring. They tend to be in more specialist units, and the flow of officers through the organisation has to be very, very carefully managed, because if you didn't manage it, you'd end up with then total inexperience all within your frontline district police. That's not something that we could allow to happen. So Dan Thorpe chairs our workforce deployment board that keeps a very, very close eye on that to try and manage it as best we can. Because what we want to do is allow the force to grow evenly across the board. So as we start to maybe put a few more officers into certain aspects of Sarah's world and specialist crime, we're doing it at the same time as more officers are flowing into districts. But it's quite an art form. I suppose it comes back to what we've always said is uplift is a nice challenge, but it is a challenge. Where we will get to eventually, but it will take, I think, probably another 12 or 18 months when we've got that absolute core of experienced officers. Then we'll get to the stage where we'll have a more balanced workforce across the board. But what we won't renege from is the fact that the model of policing for South Yorkshire Police is about neighbourhood policing, it's about preventative policing, because whilst we all talk about demand, we know that about 40% of demand is recurrent demand. And if it's recurrent demand, you can do something about it with effective problem. It doesn't mean you can't wipe it out, because you can't. It does mean that through effective problem solving through neighbourhoods, you can do something about that. That then becomes self-perpetuating, because it creates more capacity for us to do more things that matter most to the public. So that's the model. But it does take time, and it does need very, very careful management.
So I ought to return in 12 months' time to ask you the same question, but neither of us are going to be here, so okay. But I get it. I mean, it's difficult, isn't it? You've got vacancies because of more people leaving than you thought. You've got the inexperienced officers yet to sort of come through. It's a tricky one.
It is. It's not just. I'll be here in 12 months, so I'll ask myself the question. But it's not just about the numbers. It's about the experiences that the Deputy Council says. So it's a fine balance, but it's one that we're wrestling with and we're talking about and we're managing week in, week out. So it's absolutely in our focus because it's important. It's important to communities, but it's also important to our staff to make sure they've got sufficient resources around them to support them. And we give them opportunities to develop, so it's absolutely one of our key focus.
I think the other point I would want to make as well is that when we talk about officers leaving, our retention rates comparatively to other forces are very, very good here, both in terms of student officers and in terms of people leaving mid-service. We do have retention rates that are as good, if not better, than most forces in the country. And that a lot of that is whether you be aware of the huge amount of work we put in around inclusion, around supporting our staff well-being, making sure that, and some of it is about making sure that people have the opportunities to develop their career rather than being retained for longer than they would want in one part of the organisation. So all of that, I must say, it needs very, very careful leadership and detailed management.
Okay. The BBC is saying today that if you had the number of officers per head of population that you had in 2010, you'd need another 18,000 officers nationally, which is almost as many as the 20,000 over again, which is really saying something, isn't it? And I don't know whether the public have quite grasped that, but that...
And we also said that it would be even more if it correlated. I think that was based on population change, wasn't it? The 18,000.
Yes.
I think they then took the rise in crime. It would then, I think, quadruple the amount of additional cops that would be needed to manage all demand.
Okay, I swallowed on the 18,000.
I know it's bad enough, wasn't it?
But the other thing that is worthy of mentioning that is, and it's not. I've mentioned as the executive team of the force, we've got the budget that we've got, the officers that we've got, we'll do our absolute best with the resources that we've got, and absolutely preventative policing, problem solving, dealing with recurrent demand is the way to use those resources most efficiently. But in terms of comparisons back to 13, 14 years ago, if you think of all that has been done around vulnerability, about hidden harms. You know, we weren't talking about human trafficking in the same way 14 years ago. We weren't talking about CSE in the same way 14 years ago. We weren't dealing with the online crime 14 years ago that we're dealing with today. So it's not just about crime, it's about the complexity of that crime and the skills that are required to deal with it. So actually comparisons with, you know, the mid-2000s aren't, they're not, you know, it's like comparing apples with pears, really.
Yeah. Nevertheless, it was startling figures, isn't it? We will move from page 16, but if I can just stay there for a moment on response times.
Yes.
And if you could say a word about that. I mean, bearing in mind that the government is going to require us to publish response times, isn't it, fairly soon? I just wonder whether you could comment around these response times.
So our response times have improved, and that does directly correlate to what we've just talked about the increase in the frontline staff and their abilities, and as they come through the training they get to be blue light trained. So our focus has been on immediate and priority response times, particularly domestic abuse priority response times. So we have increased. We've still got more work to do on immediates. So we've increased to 72% in the last quarter. Over the course of the year, we're hitting sort of mid-70s, but it's going to be a key focus of ours in this first quarter of this year, calendar year, to look at that again. And we've got a piece of problem-solving work just looking at actually where our key areas of failure are. So there's geographic issues that are causing us to struggle with any of those, and just work more closely with our neighbourhood teams to look at what long-term problem solving we can do around those areas. It isn't specific to it.
They're the more outlying areas, presumably, aren't they?
You would imagine so, and they by and large are, but some are less so. It's just about the geography of the police bases to the incidents, and we just need to do a piece of work around that this quarter.
Okay. I mean, given what we were saying about resources, that's remarkable that your response times are as good as they are.
Yeah, and that's you know, monitored twice a day through our management meetings. Our inspectors and sergeants know what the expectation is, and actually, if somebody phones and it requires a blue light response, that we get there in the quickest, safest way possible to mitigate the threat.
Just a little moan from me. In the charts on 2.4, you talk about priority 8. I think members of the public would probably struggle to work out what priority 8 was.
Okay.
Some sort of explanation would have helped us. And RWD in the next one, I had to walk around the room twice before I worked out what RWD was. And when I did work it out, presumably resource without deployment is what you're talking about here.
That's right.
I guess people might be a bit anxious around that because the numbers seem to be quite high. But here is something. There's no deployment of officers to these, and they're big numbers, big percentages of calls.
Yeah, and they're all thoroughly assessed for threat, harm, and risk at the point that they're received into the force control room. But some of those will be people phoning up to say that to record an issue, to record a crime that actually there's no need for an officer to attend. So there'll be a lot of incidents, sort of administrative pieces in there.
Okay. Well, let's go to.
And I think we are having discussed it at the last senior leaders meeting with Tanya, our head of performance and governance. We need to have a look at some of the terminology here because it has had deployment phase. It has had our staff within the force control room, and then often it will have a desktop investigation that sits behind it. It's just not a physical deployment of a police officer immediately to that incident, if that makes sense. So we need to be careful with some of the language being used because I think it is slightly misleading. I think we need to figure out how we present it in a way where we're completely transparent about how we've dealt with these calls and what assets we've put behind and resolving some of each of these categories of calls, because that will be far more, not necessarily reassuring, but certainly informative to members of the public to understand exactly what we do with each of these.
I can see there'll be questions you'll want to ask of it, but also the public just seeing it like that.
It'd be much more helpful.
Yeah,
much more helpful. So we are working on that.
Yeah.
Right. We'll leave that one with you. I'm finally moving on to page 17, 2.5. Well, we could leave this till later, but right care, right person comes up again in the reports that we've got today. And again, I just wonder if you could say a little bit around that. I'm looking at sort of middle to the end of the paragraph. 212 incidents were reviewed in the district to potentially fall under right care, right person. 202 of those incidents were graded not for the police to attend. That's a lot.
It is. If you think it's it's actually not that large a proportion of the incidents, and we're sort of hoping that as we go into this new calendar year with phase 3, we'll start to see an increase in that. But a lot of those were, for example, somebody laid out drunk on a bench in the town centre. Well, actually, that's a call for an ambulance to go and have a look at the person, check if they're medically sound, rather than sending a police officer. So there were relatively low level incidents in terms of phase 1 and phase 2 of right care, right person. It's phase 3 where I think we'll see maybe not the increase in numbers, but certainly in terms of officer hours that are spent dealing with the incidents, which I think will probably be the greater measure.
I think the thing, and I know I've mentioned this in the later report, but perhaps just touch on it here. The thing about right care, right person is it does what it says on the tin. It is about getting an appropriate resource who can best care for that individual. And the reality is that we get lots and lots of calls where the police simply are not the best service and are not even the appropriate service to deal with and resolve that incident. And that is what it is about. It's not just about shifting demand that we don't want to deal with. It's interesting because when I've spoken to key executives for some of our partner agencies, they have described South Yorkshire Police's approach to this as very, very much based in partnership, a very strategic approach where we have set out at an executive level to have discussions with our counterparts across a range of different agencies, across health, across local authorities, to make sure there's a no surprises approach to this. And certainly the relationship that we have built with our partners in relation to implementing this policy has been very, very cooperative, and one which I think other forces could learn from. We certainly have not in any way, shape or form taken the approach that has been fairly well publicised in other parts of the country of just writing to other agencies saying that on this day we're stopping doing this, because that's not really in the best interest of the public.
No, I think we've had that phased approach, and it's been with partners, as you say, that's been good. I'm on page 18 now, Simon, up 3.3, domestic abuse and outcomes. I'm about halfway down the paragraph. Between September and November, arrest rates for medium risk have dropped slightly from 62% in August to 47% in November. The word slightly made me gulp a bit. That seemed quite a big drop, actually, not slightly.
It is, but bear in mind this report was pulled together at the beginning of December. So at the beginning of December there will have been a number of suspects for November's crimes that hadn't at that point been arrested. So November's rate will increase as time goes on. So by and large, November medium risk arrest rate sits between 50 and 60% routinely. So it will be back above 47, purely because of the timing when the report was produced.
Okay.
So if we look today, December's will be lower. But if you look again in 4 weeks, December's will have elevated as those people that are waiting to be arrested are still yet to be arrested.
Probably just added that in there.
Yeah. Apologies.
No, don't apologise for just saying me asking a question. But a lot of victims don't want the matter progress. Is that right?
Yeah, domestic abuse is a hugely involved crime for us, and obviously it's something that we spend an awful lot of time and energy to support victims. But realistically, victims have got to be happy and want to be encouraged to build the courage to make a complaint and go through with the full process. Mm-hmm. Now, clearly, we work with other agencies, with third parties, with voluntary sector, to try to encourage victims to build their confidence to support a prosecution. But unfortunately, that's not always the case, and sometimes it just isn't that victim's time yet to have built the confidence to support a prosecution.
Okay. Given the risk levels, do we have any sense of what we would like to see as the percentage outcome for each of those levels, or is that a bit crude?
I think it may be a bit crude because the risk level doesn't necessarily always relate to the individual specific offence. It relates more to the background and the history of the domestic relationship. I think ultimately we don't have a target in terms of an aspiration to trying to reach a specific level for action taken. I've got a really committed domestic abuse team and a really committed domestic abuse sergeant and inspector whose sole focus every day is to drive prosecutions and drive to prevent repeated behaviour from offenders. And if that ends up being 14% or 44%, the more people we can stop from reoffending, the better. So we don't have a specific target. We just need to make sure that we're doing absolutely the best we can for every individual victim.
Okay. Let me go to page 19. This is just something that jumped out at me. I didn't quite understand it. Child Protection 3.9. And it talks about these submitted investigations, 9% related to welfare, 9.42 missing persons, 3% related to neglect, 1.7 were related to sexual exploitation. These were regarded as not crimes. How is sexual exploitation not a crime? Or am I just misunderstanding this?
No, that shouldn't be the case. They shouldn't.
Well, this would be around intelligence and referrals in relation to young people that there are concerns about a sexual exploitation. So it isn't at that point confirmed. So it could be that we've got concerns that this young person is going out every evening, not going back until 3 a.m, coming home with some cash or whatever it may be. Yeah. So we would record that at that point as a non-crime investigation, allocate it to the team, the relevant team. Predominantly, Simon's had this new child exploitation team running since August, September, so it would probably go into them. They would engage with the young person, look at the history, look about who they're engaging with, the intelligence picture, so pulling it all together, and then if there was evidence of a crime or suspicion of a crime, we then push it in and convert it into a crime. Okay. So it's a very small percentage, which is reassuring to see. Yeah. The vast majority are just general welfare, which is what we would expect to see. But you're always going to have a small number that sit within that non-crime world.
I think it's probably worth just mentioning, it's interesting, Sarah and I were just looking at a national report that just dropped today. We're having a very brief look at it prior to coming down to PAM. And you look at the levels of crime recorded in relation to the exploitation of children in South Yorkshire, and they're very, very high. And some of that, undoubtedly, and this is something that we'll go through, is the fact that our crime data accuracy around this, and I think some of this is about the legacy of South Yorkshire. If it's a crime, it is recorded, and our scrutiny around that is particularly high. And it would appear so more so than other forces in the country.
We're recording 43% more child sexual abuse than an average force.
Really?
They don't define what they mean by average force.
So that might include North Yorkshire, for example, and Wiltshire.
It would also include big metropolitans.
But some of that is down to our absolute fastidious.
So you see it as almost reassuring rather than alarming. But it's
if there's any hint of a crime, we record it. Any hint at all.
Yeah, I mean, it's something we will look at in a bit more detail through what I held as a crime data accuracy goal group. So we'll have a look at this again. But we know that HMIC, when they came in only 18 months ago, they said that we were 99% compliant on sexual offences, probably the highest in the country. And we don't want to move away from that because then we're letting people down, letting victims down. So, but it is quite extraordinary. The percentage, I was surprised by the larger number, which inevitably impacts on outcome rates, etc. Sure. But we'll do some further. But it literally came through this morning. We discussed it earlier.
Is that an HMI?
No, it's the totality report that we talked about this morning. Yes. And then as a part of that, they provided us specific data around South Yorkshire, which is what I'm referring to.
Right. I thought that wasn't being published till Wednesday.
I think it's going out for public consumption on Wednesday, but for internal
you're
purposes.
Telling us something you shouldn't have told.
I think, well, it's our data. It's the data we've provided by the Home Office.
Right.
So
Okay.
I don't think there's anything private. The actual the public domain document will be coming out Wednesday.
Yeah. Okay. We'll look out for them. Thank you. you. I'm on page 20 now, and this is neighbourhood crime burglary. Our old friend burglary. Maybe there's more to be said across all districts and not just Barnsley here, but I mean, again, given the NPCC commitment to residential burglaries and calling on them, I don't know how realistic that is and how whether Barnsley's able to do that or how well. I wanted to ask a specific question though around the management of burglary offenders by the Integrated Offender Management Programme. I just wonder how you feel that's going and whether you had a comment on that.
Yeah, I think it's of use, definitely, and it's something that we certainly manage all of our burglary offenders. We're very, very well sighted on when burglary offenders are going to be released from prison, and those that meet the criteria that will go into Integrated Offender Management do, and our relationship in our IOM partners is very strong. So yeah, that's very much a key part of the 7x3 plan. Part and parcel of that is managing our offenders as they come out of custody.
Okay. Is residential burglary going up or down in Barnsley?
In the last year, it's come down. It's still far higher than I would like it to be. But it's definitely.
And is that the trend?
Well, I've been there since the year last September, and
I'm not blaming you.
No, it's reducing.
It's reducing.
It's reducing, but I think, as I say, it's still far higher than I would like it to be. I think taking the Deputy Constable's earlier comments around long-term problem solving, and that's what we need to be looking at. And certainly, as you just alluded to, it's the long-term problem solving around our repeat offenders. And smaller cohort of repeat offenders cause a disproportionate amount of crime in that area, I'm afraid.
I'm on page 21 now, which is antisocial behaviour at the bottom, 4.13, 4.13.
Yeah.
And I wonder whether you noticed anything. We've now got these hotspot ASB patrols going on, which aren't referenced here, which I thought they might have been actually, but anyway, they aren't. And I wonder whether you'd noticed anything about that patrolling, whether you think that's having an effect, or is it too early to say? Or?
So they're the Civitas patrols, aren't they?
Yes.
The pulse patrols for the ASB. So yeah,
Yes.
they are. They're getting very positive comment from local communities. I do feel that they're having an impact. It's probably a little bit too early yet to say what the long-term effect is. And some of ours sit alongside some of the grip patrols as well. So
Yes.
because they're not allowed at this point to overlap, so they almost abut each other. Because certainly for the town centre, those areas are really quite close geographically. So it won't be quite so easy to be able to align where the benefit's coming from. But yeah, officer presence in the community.
To ask a bit later on, perhaps. But, yeah.
Perhaps so.
So the town centre's probably fairly well covered then with grip and ASB.
Absolutely, and the joining forces and the town centre team and the wardens, yeah, absolutely. The town centre is, antisocial behaviour in the town centre is really, really low at the moment. Clearly we've got a piece of work to look at the youth zone that's going to be established in the town centre. We just need to make sure we're ahead of that, and we're working with the NBC colleagues around that.
Yeah, I mean Barnsley town centre does seem to have improved, made a huge difference of late compared with a few years ago when I think things were very different. Okay. I want to 22 now. That's neighbourhood engagement 4.16. Packed meetings and the equivalent. I wondered how often they're happening, whether you're able to get officers to them, whether you think they're worthwhile, that sort of thing. I know that's a big general question, but have we gone back to pre-COVID, or is it still patchy?
No, I think certainly the feedback I get from the neighbourhoods inspectors, they still get attendance is mixed. It's probably fair to say, but there again, I think attendance has always been fairly mixed. But we do still genuinely see the use in them. We see the use in actually engaging with communities, and certainly with some elected members in amongst those meetings, just to get a flavour for what the issues are, and make sure we can agree the priorities and give them some feedback face to face. And certainly some of the areas are extremely well attended, so we get some really good attendance, some really good feedback and sharing of information. So yeah, I do think that the value.
I don't think there's anything else I wanted to comment on, but you may have something you wanted to say, or
No, other than, I suppose the real positive in amongst all the rest of it, the sort of good news in there is as ACC Pullman alluded to, is the child exploitation team that started probably just at the end of August last year. They've got really strong links with children's social care and health and some voluntary sector, and I think that's going to be a real bonus for us heading into this new year. Not naive enough to think that there wasn't children being exploited in Barnsley. I just think we didn't necessarily have a dedicated resource to focus on it and to get to understand it and to build confidence of the young people to come forward. We've got a really good sergeant in there. We've got some really dedicated staff. As I say, and the partnership's very strong. So I'm looking forward to seeing what they deliver in the next 12 months.
Okay. Anyone else have anything on that report? If not, thank you very much indeed. And we don't always do justice to them, but it's not to say we haven't read them. We have, and thank you for it. You're very well to stay or to go, whichever.
I'll stay if that's okay.
Thank you. That was Force Performance Barnsley District Summary Update, item 10. We come to Force Performance against the Police and Crime Plan and Protecting Vulnerable People, which is item 11, and we'll do the same thing there. We'll just pick out a few things from the report and then see whether I've missed anything that we want to refer to. So if I start with page 26 and look at 3.4 first of all. Yes, it's around detectives. I met someone the other day, quite by chance, who said to me he'd applied to the force to be a detective on the fast track path, and it was closed. And I thought, that's a bit odd, because I thought we wanted detectives. What's the position?
So we have a number of different intakes across the year, and we have different recruitment campaigns. So I can only imagine that at that particular point in time, we were perhaps doing a degree apprenticeship or something like that. But the workforce plan, when you cited on the workforce plan throughout PEG meetings, there are a number of different campaigns throughout the course of the year which then factor in terms of the training plan throughout Robert Dyson House, and there are intakes of direct entry detectives planned into that recruitment plan across the course of the year.
This would be somebody with a degree, so that would be the route that they were coming in. So
Detective DHEP, we've starting courses for the last 2 Septembers. So our first cohort of Detective DHEP started in September 22. We had a second cohort start last September. So I think we aim to get about 40 to 50 people in through the Detective DHEP route every year. And then in addition to that, we have Detective Now, which is part of the Police Now, which we've run a couple of times. And we have our TI programme, which is really important we maintain, and we certainly as a force have pushed to maintain and increase the numbers through the TI. So trainee investigator, that's what it stands for, and that is for existing police officers who have worked 3, 5, 10 years in other roles within the organisation and have decided, okay, I want to change direction, I want to become an investigator and be a detective. And it provides them the opportunity for that lateral move. And the reason that's really important is because we need experience in our detective cohort. So what we can't afford, especially when you think about the types of crime they're investigating, most serious violence, your attempt murders, your rapes and serious sexual offending, we can't afford to have inexperienced individuals that have come in and done all the courses but don't have that broad brush experience of being a police officer and all the skills that come from having 5-10 years under your belt. So we've worked really carefully to maintain that balance between the new routes and the old route to ensure that going forward in Simon's PDP teams, his CID teams and those right across the force, that we have a mix of experience, because it would be dangerous, in my opinion, to fall solely on your brand new entry, your kind of entry routes into direct detectives.
Yeah. But as far as the new entrants are concerned, then there's a limit to the number we can take in. Is that also what you were saying? That when we've hit our 40 or 50?
Well, we have a pipeline for detectives, and again, a number of years ago, because of the detective shortage which we've seen nationally, we doubled our cohort that we were trying to train. So that's a mixture of all those routes. We doubled that to into the mid-90s. to try and achieve and fill all the gaps over the next few years. But it goes back to what Tim was saying earlier around a lot of our retirees are coming from this cohort of individuals because they've done 25, 29, 30 years and have progressed through their careers and become detectives and been there for the last 10, 15 years and then retire with 30 years service.
Where I think we are at the moment, and you have to keep an eye on it, and again it comes down to the importance of workforce planning, is in terms of the capacity we've got to train people, that we think just about calls with the likely pool of candidates. You know, we advertise for direct entry detectives. We know the sort of pool of interested parties we need to get a cohort of 45 to 50, and then we've got the training provision to deal with that. So I don't think that, you know, it's not as though we are overrun with candidates that we couldn't possibly take because we simply haven't got the capacity to train them. We think we're there or thereabouts in relation to them.
Okay. So this, if I randomly bump into this person again, probably tell them to
Watch the campaign.
Yeah.
Have another look.
I'll get them another go.
It will be opening again. They obviously run their calendar,
Sure.
the recruitment calendar, so it will come up again.
Okay. Page 27, 4.11, and you have a standalone IT system called Compact.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wonder if you could just explain that and why it's not able to communicate with other systems and when it's going to be able to communicate with others.
So, Compact is a system that we've purchased about, I'm trying to think, 4 years ago maybe. I know I was the SRO for it when I was ACC, local policing. So Compact is a standalone missing person system that's used by about 2/3 of the forces across the country. It has particular capabilities in terms of its metadata to allow and enable you to be able to analyse patterns around missing persons. It's also a task-based system, so when sergeants are setting tasks for officers to do to go and find someone or to manage the risk, it's auditable. So it's a system that has a lot of benefits around it. Certainly at the time, it was the best system that was out there. It is a standalone system. It's not linked to Connect. That clearly is a drawback. But some of this is there are no perfect police IT systems on the market. There just are simply not, and you have to make a judgment about what the benefits of a particular system are. And certainly, our previous system was something that had been built in-house that was effectively a free text data system that was very, very difficult to audit, and ultimately what we wanted was a system that allows us best to be able to manage the risk and best to be able to audit the risk, and we think that in Compact, in terms of systems available on the market at the moment, that's what we've got.
And talking to other systems? Or
yeah, I mean, if we had a system that could do that, that would be ideal, and it may well be that as we move forward there might be opportunities to integrate that, and clearly as we move forward over the next couple of years, we're looking at our records management system again, as well as our command and control system again, as those contracts come to an end.
Okay. A little bit below that, 4.13, you make reference to missing from home scrutiny panels. Do we have any, is there any OPCC to get involved in that at all? Or could we be, let's put it that way? Or could we know what's going on there?
Ellie Welsh is the lead for missing people, has been for the last year. I have no reason why she would not want someone from the OPCC to sit in on that. So Sharon, if you want to link with Ellie, she's more than happy to have you around that table. You've been involved in other screening panels, haven't you, across the force? So.
Over the page, on page 28, child criminal exploitation and sexual exploitation 5.1, you talk there about additional child exploitation teams in Barnsley and Doncaster. Does that complete all districts?
Yes.
No.
So if you go back to 2017 when we did the crime review and we realigned public protection with districts, just given the threat profile at that time 7 years ago, child sexual exploitation in Barnsley and Doncaster was dealt with as part of the main PVP teams, whereas Rotherham and Sheffield had a dedicated team to deal with it. as that demand profile has changed over the years, and we constantly keep that under review through our strategic profiles, we take the decision that we need to create bespoke teams at Barnsley and Doncaster, and as part of our uplift, we've used some of those resources to do that, and that's the result that we see today.
And where did the officers come from?
So,
Staff?
principally from uplift. The actual posts, the budget behind it has come from uplift. Again, this brings me back to is you can't take a new probationer straight out to training school and stick them with a child. So, where you get an experienced officer who's been with us for a few years, they will go into a team like that. You might have someone come from another team to replace them, and then you have a new student coming and backfill behind them. That's where the money's come from.
Yeah. True.
They're hybrid teams, so they're a mixture of DCs and PCs in both Barnsley and Doncaster, which we think is really the most effective model. One, to preserve the numbers of detectives to where we really need them, but also, to be fair, a lot of the work, having worked for the last decade in an era where we focused heavily around CSE, but obviously now the emerging threat around CCE, these young people are difficult to engage with because of the fact that they've been groomed, they've been exploited, they see it as they're doing it with consent, often rewarded for it. So actually it's not necessarily about detective status or not, it's about whether you've got the right skill set, the right attitude, the right mindset, the compassion and the patience to deal and persevere with some of these young people and work with their families and work with their friends and key kind of guardians, people, trusted adults, to really try and get under the skin of what's happening with them, to them. So that's why we've decided a hybrid model of PC to DC was the most effective model moving forward, and I think Simon's been really impressed with the work they've done so far, as we are in robber remand in Sheffield. So yeah, it's a good start. Obviously loads more work to be done in this area, but we just continue to learn.
It's very good to read that, and we just wanted to note that.
Again, I think just a reflection on it, you'll have heard me say this around this table many times over the time that I've been here, is that the instant you think you've got your cracks, you'll fall behind.
Yes.
You have to keep on top of it, and the model that we put in 2017 isn't the model for 2024. I've absolutely no doubt by the time we get to 2028, we'll be doing it different again, and you've got to try and stay ahead of it.
Just a little lower down on that page, at 5.8, further collaboration between district CE teams and centralised internet, etc., etc. And then it says, final sentence, additional support is being sought through teams at the regional organised crime unit. Are you getting that?
So this is about the join up between the ROCU, our central crime teams and our local teams, and making sure that through our tasking processes we've got the ability to be able to share intelligence and actually make sure that any work that requires a specialist skill set from our ROCU colleagues that we get that. So yes, we're quite confident through our regional tasking as the systems and processes in place.
Page 29, 5.15. This is all around virtual reality and the troubles that's bringing for some young people. I mean, quite a number of people have been speaking to me over the last few days about the case of the under 16-year-old girl, I think it was, who has this virtual world that she goes into and has a character in that. Her avatar was brutally attacked, indeed raped, by others who were on the site. And they were asking around that as to what messaging the police are thinking, what can we do to inform parents and indeed young people of the dangers here? What crimes are being committed, and is anybody following this up? That sort of thing.
So I think we'll start with this. This is an emerging. We talk about new trends and emerging areas of business. This is quite clearly the latest area of business that absolutely we need to develop capacity and capability to understand exactly what the threat is. And we're doing that, and we are alive to this and working with colleagues both on a national and regional basis to understand this better. I think if you were asked to ask me what message would I give at the moment, speaking as a father of 3 teenagers, is understand what your children are doing online as best you can. That's the most important thing. It is a real challenge for all of us as parents, is that, you know, teenagers come in at night and they'll sit there on the phones, and it's hard to know what they're looking at, but it's important to talk to them and have conversations with them, and have an open dialogue to try and understand the risk and understand if your child is at risk.
And in terms of crimes being committed, because the reaction of the girl to what happened virtually was as if it had happened to her physically, as if she had indeed been raped there. I mean, are there any thoughts in the policing world around?
Well, I think they are, you know, that's getting a lot of attention at the moment. I mean, I have to decide, you know, what crimes have been committed, whether there's child. That's an issue for prosecuting authorities, and certainly it's an area of law that I think is going to develop over years to come.
Okay.
There's the online sexual harms consultation that's out there at the moment, where this might be something to highlight for Ofcom in terms of regulations, that they might look to some of the services that are facilitating this.
Yeah.
I think the closing date is the 23rd of February for the first consultation, first of all.
But it is a real challenge for statute.
Huge.
It's a huge challenge because I work on rape and serious sexual offending. All require direct contact. There is nothing that caters for virtual spaces currently. So it needs a real shift in mindset.
And I think the legislative framework around the software providers and the companies that provide this sort of technology, the regulations, then is going to be an important piece moving forward.
They're the ones you would think who would be able to be that step ahead, because if they're policed properly, what's going on their platform, that they should be able to actually be coming to you.
You would hope so, but I mean, it's an emerging, very, very new area of business, and certainly, I mean, I have to say, we heard on this through the week, you know, we sat there and thinking, this is just new, this is just a new emerging area.
Yeah. Okay. Just on page 33, violence against women and girls, is the new lead person in?
She starts on the 15th.
On the 15th?
Yes.
That's Deb.
Deb Mahmood starts on the 15th, and her and Natural will have a week in which to share knowledge.
Oh, there's an overlap.
There's a short overlap. There is an overlap.
No, it wasn't a criticism, that was a good
thing. No, it is a good thing.
Yeah,
that's what we've worked really hard to make sure we can get Debs in time before Nat disappears. Although Nat will still be around for us to...
Okay, great, thank you very much. Page 34, 10.5. Just wanted to say I thought this was good. Though the awareness work that Police Commission Services and Partners have carried out, through the awareness work that Police Commission Services and Partners have carried out, South Yorkshire Police are currently the highest force in terms of the number of victim survivor responses for the month of October 2023. I just thought that was...
And it's continued to be really... We've shared it. In fact, Sharon was at the Waves event that I presented at back in November. We shared it there. Nat's shared it heavily with the IAG. We've shared it with our scrutiny panel, so our partners who work in the RASO world. And having had a bit of a slow start to completion, we are now second to the Met and continue to be so. In fact, we're very close to the Met in terms of numbers of submissions. So when you think about size and volumes, it's and what I think we're getting reporting back in the next few months. So we don't get instantaneous reports back on the feedback. How they collate it all and then provide it to us. But I think it will be really, really helpful just to give us. Sharon started doing that work back in 21 around tracking the cases. We can use this and the other feedback from the ISBAs to really understand what victims are feeling and how they feel about the CJ process. We know the challenges within the criminal justice process right now, the delays, the impact of victim attrition. So it would be really, really insightful to hear it straight from the victim's mouth. So we're looking forward to that.
It's really positive. And like Sarah said, it's been shared really widely. There's been multiple efforts across, especially with the specialist victim services, to kind of get this out to those victims that have been subject to mental illness offences.
Good, thank you. Page 36 at the bottom, 12.10. It has been agreed that a cohort new digital media investigators will commence in the new year. I wondered whether they were civilian posts or...
Mixed bag again, hybrid model. So appreciating the challenges that Simon's talked about earlier, we made a decision last year when this is all linked into the UCAS accreditation and need to be compliant with codes of practice from the forensic science regulator, and obviously UCAS are the enforcing body around the FSR's codes of compliance, codes of practice rather. So what we decided last year was that we would split it, and it's predominantly police staff, but with some police officers in it, recognising the challenges of the flow and churn of police officers currently. So we're recruiting now into the DMI roles. We've got a couple of DMIs, but we need to really strengthen that cohort so that we're in a position to have those trained and accredited staff undertaking the downloads of devices to be compliant with the FSR. But also, you'll have heard of this in relation to RASO and serious sexual offending, where the government, as part of their end-to-end rate review, said that all victims shouldn't be without their phones for more than 24 hours, so they have to turn their phones round, or either turn it round in 24 hours or give them a replacement phone. It's part of our ADR, so our annual data return, and it will be mandatory from April. So this team of DMIs will also be there to support Simon and the other districts' teams who are dealing with rape victims to go out and make sure we can do the downloads with real close attention to the proportionality and necessity around those downloads, and make sure that victim isn't left without a phone for more than absolutely necessary timescale. So this team will achieve lots of different things, but predominantly around that accreditation piece.
Again, good stuff.
Yeah.
37, 12.12. Just again, just to note that, I think very good. A new bespoke South Yorkshire police response to fraud is being developed and will be launched in March 2024. All on course for that. And
yeah, we again, through the senior command team, we recognise the need to invest more heavily in economic crime, so including fraud. Back in 2021, I think it was, 2022, we've reconfigured all of our teams. We've got a refresh on the strategy. We've aligned it to serious organised crime, which has been really, really successful because we've used different tactics to really tackle organised fraudsters with some great results across South Yorkshire, some of which have been publicised nationally at the National Economic Crime Briefing and also the Serious Organised Crime Conference back in October, November of last year. So we're going from strength to strength in fraud, but we do need to increase our capacity in light of the fact that it represents, if you take fraud and cybercrime, it's about 50% of all crime now. So it's a huge volume. And the dedicated resource we have is very limited. So we need to think about how we transition from where we are now to the next 5 years and what that's going to look like. And we've just talked about VR, haven't we, and the impact of VR. So where does that take us in the future, and what capabilities do we need? I think it's going to be a story of constant evolution in this area as we we'll try to keep up with tech and how criminals are exploiting tech.
Sure.
And it's going to need investment in years to
A lot
come.
of investment.
Yeah. Anything with IT means more money. Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much. Well, that was everything that I wanted to ask about that. I don't know if there's anything.
No, I think again, it's just interesting some of the bits in the report today. Just highlight that constant need to stay ahead.
Yes.
The changing landscape.
And some of the themes we keep reverting to, but that's the way of it. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
That was force performance item 11. 12 we've withdrawn. The reason I've withdrawn that is because I think it would be beneficial for us to have a conversation with the office about the kind of things that I would quite like to see in that report. So it'd be a shame to have a report and say I'd like to see X, Y and Z when they could do that for us and get it back. But, okay, we're on to assurance reports. First of all, JIAC then, which is item 13. Steve, the chair of JIAC, is here, pages 39 onwards. Steve.
Thanks, Alan. There's a fair list of work that we went through at the last committee meeting. The two big risks that we continue to be concerned about are the IT services. Funny that you just finished the last item on IT, but we're still concerned about the delivery of and choice of delivery of IT. And also we're keeping a monitoring eye on the risks of the transfer to the mayoral authority, and trying to make sure that we've got the right assurance in the right place for that. We look closely at the savings programme, which looks as though it's delivering. We had a presentation on the anti-fraud and corruption work in the force, which not least is very interesting, but it's pretty comprehensive, the work that goes on, and we're assured that the force are doing exactly the right thing with all of that. And we had a presentation from the external auditor. They presented their annual report and value for money report. We've signed both of those off, and we're satisfied that we could provide the right amount of assurance to yourself and to the Chief Constable.
Thank you very much, and I was at most of JIAC, so I do know what the discussions were. Sophie, you're on the call remotely. I don't know if there's anything you wanted to comment on arising from the JIAC report.
Mainly, Commissioner, on the fact that the accounts have now been finalised. They were actually signed off, as you recall, just before Christmas, and they're published on the website now. We're one of the first in the country to get our accounts signed off, and I think credit to the finance teams and Grant Thornton to actually try and push those through. The earlier we can get them signed off in line with the statutory deadlines, the better, because it means that we're not left with anything waiting for next year that could come back to bite us. So I'm really, really pleased about that.
Thank you. And with the transition to the mayoral model, we want to get on with these things, don't we, and have them all done. So thank you to Debbie and your team. And I think we asked for those thanks to be passed on at JIAC. So, okay. Sophie, was there something else? Or?
No, nothing else really.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think that's everything under JIAC then. IEP Assurance Report. Michael Lewis is not here today, but has sent a page 45, to look at. I think the only thing I wanted to comment on was the final paragraph. He says IEP is aware of its own, the Independent Ethics Panel is aware of its own limitations in dealing with the rapidly advancing area of policing, that's AI and all that, and anticipates being able to strengthen its capacity in the new year. IEP will maintain its focus on digital policing and in particular facial recognition in the course of 2024. And I recently interviewed and appointed a new member of the Independent Ethics Panel. He's Dr. Jamie Grace, Sheffield, Hallam University, very experienced in this. He already sits on the IEP for West Midlands. He's worked with the Met, I think. So I think we're very lucky to have him, and he will come and strengthen that. He's a lecturer in public law, but AI is his speciality, so we're pleased about that. I think that's everything, unless anyone has any comment on that. Chief Executive reporting, well, she's reporting that she's not here. So, Linda, pages 47 to 52, the victim journey in the CJS.
Yes, Commissioner. What we were looking to do here is just to give a flavour of some of the work that we're doing to support victims. So the report sets out some of the context insofar as the work that goes on with the local criminal justice board, where we look to see how we best support victims, which we've already discussed in part in the meeting earlier. And of course you receive money from the Ministry of Justice to provide support services for victims to help them cope and recover in the aftermath of crime, and through the criminal justice experience. We've done some work through the local criminal justice board to look at for those victims who aren't able to stick with the case all the way through to natural conclusion. We've been doing some work to see whether there are things that in partnership we can do together to make things better. And some of that work pointed to actually the journey that the victim takes can be quite complex, and that a number of the practitioners who work with victims may not be aware of all of the different stages that the victim may then currently go on to experience. And so what we looked to do was we decided to host an event back in the autumn where we looked to demystify the victim journey. And so you'll see in the report there that some of the things that we were looking to do and some of the things that we aim to achieve for those partners, to increase their knowledge and their awareness of each other's roles, of what they do, so that they could better support the victim throughout the system, that we would look to find ways in which we could improve both the quality and timeliness and collaboration of those communications with victims, and try to do our best to see what we might do to make sure that victims are not having to constantly repeat their story, particularly where it can be particularly traumatic, as we've already heard earlier in the meeting. It was to provide a networking opportunity, so for a lot of these partners that they may not necessarily know who some of their counterparts are in those agencies, and also to give them an opportunity to ask questions of one another. We also look to focus on some of the special measures provisions that are in place. These are special arrangements that can be authorised by the court to help victims give their very best evidence when they are particularly vulnerable. And how those particular measures work, we wanted to make sure that not only what came from the event, not only do victims know what's available and what might meet their particular needs, but also the various partners, because actually they may not be advising them in the best way possible as to what's available and how they would actually work in practice. So we had a very well attended event. We were way oversubscribed insofar as interest was concerned, so over 50 delegates on the day. And all of the partners came together and identified things that they were able to take away, and we are looking to see how this might then be progressed over the course of the coming months. So for example, I mentioned their special measures. One of the key things that we're looking to do is to develop not just information that's for victims themselves, but a special one that's also available for partners so that they will better understand what's available. The event had a number of key aims, one being to increase the knowledge and awareness of each other's roles and responsibilities. A second one was to improve the quality, timeliness and collaboration of those communications and share between them, to network with one another, to provide the partner agencies with ask and answer. And as a result of the event, then there's been some outputs in terms of packs and information that has been shared widely across partners, and a lot of training, because those that came along to the event, then because we were limited by numbers, some of the expectation is that those that attended would then go back and share that information internally. So that's the work that's ongoing at the moment. We had some very, very positive feedback from those who participated, which you'll see some of those comments that are in the report itself, and actually some of the changes that it's already led to. And as I say, our plans are that we will revisit this later into this year, when we can see with the fullness of time what has changed, and importantly really focus on some of the outputs that how they've been delivered and making things better for victims who are having to navigate their way through the criminal justice system.
Thank you. I thought it was a very interesting event, a really interesting event, and the fact that it was oversubscribed, it shows you that it meant a lot to those who were there. But I found some of the comments that people were making that you captured here were really, really interesting. Quite small changes, someone said, can make such a big impact. That's, that obviously they hadn't thought about it before, but now they've thought about it. And then the final comment on page 50 there, it was eye-opening to realise the extent of services that victims have had contact with before we make contact with them. So, that's really good that people's eyes were open in that way.
I think what's really pleasing as well is the fact that this is very shortly, really after the event, that we're able to see some of the real tangible changes that have been made very quickly, and it'll be important to see how they then translate in greater fullness of time.
Absolutely, yeah. No, that's good stuff. Thank you. Any other comments? Okay, thank you very much. Shall we go to item 16 then, strategic and financial planning update? I think, Sophie, are you going to lead us on that?
Yes, I can do, Commissioner. Essentially, this report sets out the process that we go around our strategic and planning timetable. So as a brief summary, I'll assume everybody's read it. The budget process starts in September with various operational assessments being considered along with the police and crime plan, from which an assessment of policing need in South Yorkshire's JIAC. A similar exercise is taken within the PCC. That includes commissioned services and the violence reduction unit. In parallel, work is undertaken with the Home Office and others around the financial assumptions to be made in the budget, and also on consultation with the public and other stakeholders around policing priorities and precept considerations. Once all those are drawn together and firmed up, and appropriate due diligence has been undertaken on the various options, plans and proposals that have been put forward, the final budget, which is essentially a costed plan, is determined. The final stage is to take the precept proposal to the police and crime panel, which this year is arranged for the 5th of February, and then the full and final budget proposal, which is for revenue and capital, will be presented to you, Commissioner, at the end of February in line with the deadlines. Fiona might be able to give you more information around the statutory consultation, because I wouldn't know that's just closed. So if Fiona wants to give an update.
Thanks, Sophie. Fiona, the consultation.
The consultation closed yesterday. It's ran since the beginning of November with the public around the priorities for policing and the precept setting for the coming year. We've had a really good response this year, which was just under 4,000 responses, which is over 1,000 more than we've had on the previously best responses that we've had in previous years. That was really positive from that side. We've got a good sample of the public there, and overwhelmingly a large percentage of those are saying that they do see the value of paying a little bit more for policing and crime services and to continue to be able to provide and improve services going forward for the coming year.
Which is very gratifying. I must say, given that in other years we've had some resistance with the public consultation to paying more for policing, and I thought people would be struggling again this year financially. Well, I'm sure they are struggling financially, but they're willing to pay a little bit more for policing, so that's the news that we need to hear. I think it does mean that I have a certain scope, therefore, in setting the precept, a certain flexibility, which we may well need, given that the settlement was not perhaps as generous as it might have been. We probably need all the money we can get from our other sources. That doesn't mean to say that the police don't have to make savings. They clearly do in order to balance the books, so that's going on as well. But we've got pretty well all the ducks in a row now, and we shall be able to determine that budget and set the precept and get that to the police and crime panel. And do all that on time. So that's all we need, I think. Anything else, Sophie? Are you happy to leave that there?
I'm happy to leave that there unless there are any questions.
Okay. Any questions on the report? Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you, Sophie. That was item 17 PCC Decisions, page 57, 58. Sophie, are you taking that if there are any questions?
Yeah, this is me again. It's just an update on the key decisions that you've made, Commissioner. There have been 34 formal decisions made this year, 3 since the last meeting. They relate to the continuation of the contract with PricewaterhouseCoopers, who are assisting us to undertake a priority-based budgeting exercise. The first part of that exercise has been very successful, and we want to continue the good work that's been undertaken. It should help us to become more efficient and effective, as well as assisting with the savings gap. Other decisions, the other 2 that were made, were around the updated contract standing orders and further investment into the joint data centre with Humberside.
Okay. Any questions on anything in the report at all? If not, we'll accept that. Thank you very much indeed. 34 decisions, no wonder I feel exhausted. Item 18 is the work programme. Again, Sophie, this will be you, will it? 59 to 62.
the work programme is self-explanatory, isn't it, really? The next PAB is on the 26th of February. The papers are required by the 15th. That's an additional PAB, and it's for the final precept recommendations and budget for next year.
Okay, thank you very much. I think that's that. Any other business? Item 19, date and time. Date and time next meeting, 7th of March.
26th February.
26th of February. It's all right, it's on my agenda.
The budget one's been squeezed in, but that's the next full PAB is the...
We're all clear what the dates
March,
are.
yeah.
That's the main thing. I think that's it, everybody. So thank you very much indeed for your attendance. Thank you.
Thank you.